kind of like a nasty girls kind of thing there a little bit. It was pretty good.
Burpees are the
Let's
best
go.
thing since sliced bread
Um,
and
it's
turkey stuffing.
yeah. So I have a question for you that every athlete in your gym hounds us on.
Okay.
Why do you program so many burpees?
Man, burpees are life. Like, burpees are the most amazing exercise. And, just the fact that you get down on the ground and you get up off the ground in an efficient, speedy manner. If you think about that, that's something we need from when we're a baby. We work on that, right? At, right after birth, or maybe a couple months. I don't know. I haven't had a child. I don't know what the time frame for standing up is with a child, but one of the first objectives in life is to get up off the ground. Okay, whether you've fallen or started down there, you want to get up off the ground. Throughout your life, that's a skill you need.
And that's the objective when you're 80, 90,
Right,
is
that's
to
the same
get off the
objective when you're
ground.
80 and 90. If you maintain the ability to do burpees, to get efficiently up off the ground when you're on the ground, whether you're stepping up, jumping up,
But
getting that jump
why
at
do
the
people
top.
hate them so much?
Because I think it's that, the old saying of, once you are moving, you're going to keep moving. If you're sitting, you're going to keep sitting,
Okay.
right? We talk about physics until an object is acted on by an equal opposing force.
Evil opposing force, a burpee.
I think people have that same mentality as well as that same physics. If you are sitting, you don't necessarily want to get up. You're comfortable. You're in a comfort zone. You don't want to have to, move around
Lay
too
on the
much.
ground.
Right.
I got to get up.
Once you're on the ground, you're like, man, this is great. This is restful. And maybe that is a symptom of how overworked we are, both physically and mentally, on these non-productive.
They just want to check out on that ground.
On this physically non-productive things. Like, yes, we need to work to make money, but generally we're sitting in a chair, and physically that's not productive for us.
So you can't do a burpee in a chair. I don't know. Probably not. No. Maybe.
That would be difficult.
That would be really difficult.
That would be very difficult.
Probably hit your head on.
Even seated athletes or athletes who are in wheelchairs will generally do some modification of a burpee on the ground.
Okay.
So they will transfer to the ground from the chair and do a burpee from there.
So you're saying there's no easy way to do a burpee?
I don't think we should be looking for an easy way to do a burpee.
Right? No, right? 100%.
You do the burpee the most difficult way you can, in my opinion. If that means right now, because of your cardiovascular ability or because of some physical limitation, that means you're on the ground and you slowly one hand up, press yourself up, one foot, and slowly get yourself to standing. If that is all you can do, then that should be what you do. But if you're more than capable of dropping yourself down on the ground, right, pushing yourself up, jumping those legs up, jumping to standing with full extension, and jumping and clapping those hands overhead, then by all means, I want you doing that.
So you know what I say? Today's Thanksgiving, and I want to give thanks to the burpee.
Okay. Do you want to do a couple right now? Just you, not me, but you.
I can do them anytime you want. I don't know if it's appropriate. I think it's rolling, so we probably.
I don't know if I can see you if we do burpees, but we will do a burpee.
Close your eyes and imagine me doing burpees. Done. So let's. I
don't think so. No, it doesn't work that way. To all my athletes that are out there listening, it does not work to tell the coach, close your eyes and imagine me doing burpees and they'll be done. Please do not go forward. We do not do this at home or in the gym. Okay. Good Lord. Folks, welcome to the Affiliate Soapbox, the never-ending
talk. The never-ending talk of the burpee. We could go on for hours.
I'm Coach Tanya.
And I'm Coach Mertz. Yeah.
And this is the Affiliate Soapbox.
Welcome.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Yeah. Here we are talking about burpees. And I've heard that from a couple of coaches, just this week. Why do we have so many burpees in the programming?
Why, God? Why are you doing this to us?
It has to be done. There is no way around it. A burpee is a fundamental movement. We just kind of talking about it before started.
Maybe the most fundamental.
Most fundamental. Right. And I would hate to say you should see them maybe twice a week. I mean, once a week at minimum.
It, folks. So when we see it twice a week now instead of once a week.
Twice a week is even better. It's a great body weight movement that incorporates so many different elements of the human body, and why not use it?
Absolutely. And I think when it comes to programming, a lot of people do have that question. Why do we see the things that we see? Who wrote this? I hear that a lot. Sometimes I think that to myself, even though it was me, right? Who put
I
us
don't think there's any more gratitude than when somebody says, "Damn, that workout was hard."
We're looking what I don't, but I think what we're not looking for is necessarily that workout was hard. That workout, I want it to be fun. I want it to be efficient.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
do want it to challenge you. I think that a lot of times, especially today, when we see things like High Rocks, we see F45, we see Orange Theory, we think we got to be going 85 to 90%, full 60-minute, full send and go. And if you're not wrecked by the end of the workout, if you're not on the floor hoping for death,
Yeah.
you haven't worked out, when that's completely not accurate.
Yeah.
CrossFit programming definitely does not lend to that
No, look,
aspect
we
of
could we
working
can
out.
program a day that's one movement, burpees for time, 7 minutes, and you will be blasted.
Absolutely.
And you won't see that in the F45s, the high rocks and all that, because training that very fractional of timeline is something that is needed, and and you're just not going to find it anywhere else.
By the same token, just like we did this last Tuesday, you might program all back squats. So on Tuesday, we did 30 minutes. Every 2 minutes, you did two back squats at 85%.
Yeah.
Right. And I had several people the day before, really, we're only doing back squats. Absolutely. Folks, I don't know how much more to impress upon someone. There is absolutely nothing wrong. In fact, there's everything right with a pure strength day, right? Every so often, just as much as there's everything right about a pure cardio day every so often.
It
Do we mix modalities? Absolutely. Because we're doing CrossFit methodology. We're getting the most out of every single hour we spend in the gym. And sometimes, because we're constantly varied, that means we're doing one thing in the gym and we're doing that one thing the entire time
Yeah,
we're here.
I think a big part of that, right, is first off the programming, right? You have your L3, I have my L3, the programming, learning the programming, and the reason why we just have strength only days and why it should be at least once a week, if not sometimes rotates around into having two a week. But
Happen.
it can happen, and the idea there is that if we if we try to mix in all these different modalities with that strength, we're going to steal from the strength. And then what happened here is, I think where the
But that's proven to be incorrect.
correct, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and what I think happened here is something happened. I know what the something is, but something happened. Let's say roughly 8 to 10 years ago, where programmers started adding a strength and a metcon on most days, and the reason why is because they saw games athletes doing it and figured,
Right.
oh, that's the way to get better. Let's go attack it. So a lot of people, a lot of athletes that walk into a CrossFit gym think that's the way it's supposed to be, when that is so far from the truth.
All right. They think you have to come in, you warm up, you do a strength piece, then you do a conditioning piece that may or may not have something to do with the strength piece.
Sometimes that's
And
what's
then
aggravating.
possibly not a cool down and you walk out the door. And that's absolutely not how
No,
CrossFit was built.
no,
We are built on the constantly varied. And by saying we're going to take every single class and we're going to do exactly this, exactly this, exactly this, and then maybe a cool down and walk out the door, that goes against the grain of the very methodology that
mm,
we are working.
yeah, yeah,
And I think that's one of the reasons that here at X7 CrossFit, we do our own programming. I do our own programming with a lot of input from my coaches, because I'm looking for that pure CrossFit methodology. I'm looking for the way what was originally set up to make us the best that we can be. That may make us the best of the best in our community. That may make us the best of the best in the world in terms of functional fitness, in terms of elite athletes. But what we're looking for is to maintain that constantly varied, right? Both in terms of movement, in terms of time. We want to make sure that we are varying and constantly challenging ourselves to push that adaptation, which is what you lose when you just constantly do the same thing
yeah.
day after day after day after day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think one of the hardest things is programming is when we're setting up those days, right? We have this thing called you have the microcycles, you have mesocycles, and you have macrocycles, and the microcycles are basically 1 2 weeks long, meso being 3 to 12 week long, and then a macro would be anything over 12 week long. And what ends up happening here is a reason why not every gym programs the same way. We know this, and it's probably one of those things. Doesn't matter if you program a 12 week out versus programming week to week. And I think there's some nuances to it. Obviously, if you're programming week to week, there's the benefit in that is that you are able to see what happened last week, kind of go into the next week, seeing what worked, what didn't work. We can kind of adjust a few things on the fly. So to say, you start looking 3 to 12 weeks, you can kind of start elaborating that a little bit longer. And then you get to the macro, a 12 week long period where you're probably just kind of focusing on the benchmarks, right? So this might be 4 benchmarks you want to hit throughout those 12 weeks, and you kind of and then you kind of program around those. And a lot of times as a programmer, we tend to bias. Look, I can tell you right now, if I could clean and jerk every day, I would do it.
Because you like it.
I love to do clean jerks. And clean jerks is, we talked about last podcast about the power adaptation that clean jerks can do is we can exhibit great tons of power with it, strength, development of all the from muscles from toe to shoulder. It's a great, like you want to get your heart rate up, cycle some clean and jerks, right? I mean, it's a great tool, but we can't do it every day because you would break.
Right. Somebody's got to say no.
Yeah.
For me, in terms of if we're thinking of micro, meso, macro, I sit down and I have a broad framework of what I'm trying to do. So I might say, okay, so between September 1st and December 1st, I want to increase everybody's performance in the CrossFit total and this rowing test, right? And the last rowing test we did, which is a rowing test that we have coming up, is 3 rounds, 7 minutes rowing for calories with a 2-minute break. Right. So I want to see both in terms of strength and in terms of have you improved your ability to row, your technique in the strength, your technique in the row. I want to see if you can lift heavier. I want to see if you can row at a steady pace. And then I want to see if you can beat the calories that you put on the board, the total calories. And I want to see if you can lift heavier. Within that broad, maybe, 3-month, 12-week cycle, if you will, I'm not actually doing a strength cycle. I'm not doing a rowing cycle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the word cycle, I really don't like that word at all.
Yeah.
I'm sprinkling it because I'm constantly working on my athlete's strength. At no point are we not in a strength cycle. Okay. I'm constantly working on my athlete's strength. There are different movements during different periods that I use to test my athlete's strength. Right. So one part of the year I might be looking at the push press. Another part of the year I might be looking at the pull up. I'm looking at overall ability for my athletes, overall both functional, ability, gymnastics ability. I want that strength in there. So I tend to program movements like skill transfer movements, right? So let's talk about skill transfer. We've got the snatch. Well, what transfers to the snatch? You've got your overhead squat, okay? That works on your overhead position, your balance. We talked about this last time, your proprioception. I also program a lot of snatch balances, or I try to. A lot of times we have to modify that. We look at other movements like wall walks. Okay, wall walks lend and teach you how to do a handstand walk. Okay, nobody likes the wall walks. I was not thrilled when they were made an RX movement myself. I also look at strength transfer movements. When you look at a kettlebell swing, you don't necessarily think of that as increasing your strength. Okay, kettlebell swing does lend to increasing your deadlift 1 rep max. And it does that because it's a hinging movement with some load, a lighter load, but at a higher
but also
volume.
with the grip training of the
Right,
two.
the grip training and the increased volume, okay? When you talk about step-ups and going towards your back squat, okay? Step-ups are a unilateral movement, right, as opposed to the back squat. But that single leg stability, that single leg strength helps balance that back squat and will help increase your 1 rep max back squat further down the line, right? We look at when someone doesn't have a pull-up, we often scale them to things like a barbell row, okay, a ring row, but we also sprinkle in strength movements, right? We've got our dead hang, we've got our inverted row, but we don't do that just as a scaling option or a modification. We also want to be doing that for athletes that have pull-ups, that are already efficient at pull-ups, because we want to keep increasing that strength and that skill. For your handstand push-ups,
Yeah.
if you don't have those, yes, I'm making you work on that Z press and then that push press, but I'm also doing that because I want to increase your overall pushing strength, right? You're moving your load overhead. So in terms of cycles, I would say I don't like them. I would say realistically, I'm never thinking, what are we doing this cycle? I'm thinking, you know what? I want to see how much my athletes can back squat over this period of time. And I want to keep increasing that over the next 6 months, over the
Yeah.
next year. And I'm going to take all these different tools in our toolbox and I'm going to use those to get to that goal and to keep pushing that goal further along the horizon.
Yeah. So one of the things you said was talking about the step up and how it relates to the back squat. And oftentimes it's a question to you. So if we're going to, let's say we're doing a back squat for today, all we're doing is back squat like the one you did this past week. Um, are you looking at, okay, so we did back squats this day. Am I looking at next week having like a heavy lunge or a heavy box step up or something of that variation of that unilateral positions? Because you have that intent in mind. Okay, if we back squat today, maybe you do it, maybe you back squat on Monday, maybe you have, okay, well, I'm going to double it up. We're going to do some weighted box step ups Friday, right?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give your legs a few days to recuperate to get
Air
to that.
squats the following
It's kind of like a
Tuesday.
conjugate kind of method there, right? Where you do a heavy and then light adaptation to reinforce that movement, right? And you kind of just build that block. And then now do you do test outs with those kinds of movements like a back squat?
I do test out. So again, I think I mentioned one of our tests earlier in September was the CrossFit Total, and that tests your back squat, it tests your deadlift, and it tests your strict press, right? And so we will be testing that again. Surprise, everybody. We'll be testing that again, not next week, but the week after. And I'm looking at all of the movements, all of the different pieces I put together since that first test day. And we're looking at how did that increase and did that increase? Because it's all data. It's all the scores up to that point, including the test score, telling me how well did these methods and these different movements and the way that I put them together increase my athlete's strength. What I don't do, what I really don't like, is when you see a programmer, okay, we're going to have a strength cycle and we're going to do back squats every Monday for the next 6 weeks. We're going to do deadlifts every Wednesday for the next 6 weeks. And we're going to do some pressing movement every Friday for the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's going back to the cycle part you hate, right? It's
I really don't
the
like it.
progressive cycles, typical strength progressive cycles that have a linear percentage kind of base, which I don't like either. I did that for a long time, and I think there's positive things to doing the strength things, but how do you know how you feel when you walk in every day? If I'm trying, and a lot of injuries have happened, especially to me, I've seen others get injured because you're supposed to hit whatever, 75, 85, 82, 83% of whatever it was. And you just, let's say you had a bad day, you walk in and now you're really struggling to hit that percentage. You may not have it in you that day. And then you're over pushing and you end up hurting yourself because you're based on that percentage. If you don't do that percentage, you failed.
Well, in addition
Yeah.
to that, you're missing some of the benefits, a lot of the benefits, all of the benefits of that unilateral strength training, right? So whether it's step ups, whether it's lunges, whether it's pistols, whether it's Bavarian
What all
split
attributes
squats,
to
right?
building leg strength.
Balancing the strength on both of your legs going into that squat is very important. And a lot of athletes are missing out. If all you're doing is that back squat for 6 weeks, that's all you're doing. You're not
Yeah.
improving some of the areas that would help push that back squat over the edge to hit that new 1 rep max.
And now it's a potential issue for over volume there too, because if you are pushing these percentages, you're getting 3 weeks in on this cycle, and you have to hit these numbers, and then what if you had lunges a few days beforehand, your legs are shot, and you're trying to hit these cycles, and that could be a bad programming aspect there of somebody who doesn't understand it. But I've seen it. I've seen it because you go in just worn out, and now you've got to hit these percentages.
And I think there's a difference between, yes, for a power lifter, okay, who is training specifically for that, that is their goal. would the method of these 6-week cycles, 8-week cycles, however they're going to build that up, actually be more beneficial? Yes. Do I still think they need to sprinkle in some of this accessory work and unilateral work? Yes. Do I actually think they need some cardio so that they have better heart health? Yes.
Yeah.
But that being said, that specific, when you're going for that specific sport, specificity is appropriate. When you're talking about your recreational athlete, when you're talking about your average RX athlete or your average intermediate athlete or your scaled athlete in a CrossFit gym, absolutely
Right.
not. I don't like it. I don't believe in it.
Well, it's the GPP idea,
Right.
is the general prepare physical fitness. I mean, every day you should train like anything can happen anytime. That's the variedness of life. So that's the variedness that you should program, right? So leading to that, we life is not percentages. We don't
No.
walk out the door and look. There's a 3% chance that somebody runs the light and runs you over. I mean, that's a percentage, but you don't live your life around that.
Exactly. And I think that too, when you have these strict, we're going to do this Monday, Wednesday, this Friday, then you have athletes that start cherry picking. First off, you've got
Oh,
athletes who are
yeah,
like, oh,
yeah.
I'm only going to come on Monday. I'm going to skip Tuesday, Thursday. I don't like deadlifts, so I'm not going to come on Wednesday. I've never heard anybody say that, but it's possible. Okay. Right. They don't like deadlifts, that they're going to not come on Wednesday. You also have the opposite of that. Say you have an athlete who works every Monday. Right? They cannot come on Monday. Maybe they have shift work.
It's
Maybe
got to
they're a
move
nurse.
around.
Maybe they're
Yeah,
a first responder. So now they're never back squat because
yeah,
you always have back squats on Monday, right? So
yeah, yeah.
the cycle itself is not even practical in terms of CrossFit and the athletes that we have coming in that are local, that are your moms, that are your dads, that are even are your working executives. It's not practical because then that's all they're going to get in or all they're going to miss on
Yeah.
that specific day. So
Correct.
again, it goes back to I don't like it.
Yeah, and a big part of that is like the nuances of where do you plug in those days, because that's important. If you're back squatting every Monday, and CrossFit, the program, we don't do that. We'll shift that strength day around, and one of those reasons why is so that it gives people a chance to make it on a day that they couldn't make prior. But not only that, but when we're looking at the week, a lot of times, like when let's say there's a strength on the board this week. I'll tend to do this. There's two elements that when I program. One is, what is the strength for that week that I have to program? And two, what is the workout that I create that I want to see people do? So with that being said, I usually when I set up my week, I'll put whether matter on where the strength was the week prior. If it was early in the week, I may put it in the middle of the week this week coming up. But that other workout, that I want most people to catch, I'm going to have to move that around now. Do I prioritize that one or the strength? It matters. It matters for me. But I tend, when I program, there's a strength for the week. There's a workout I want to see everybody do. And I try to move that around to the days that we have the most attendance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all these little nuances of programming that we have to look at, and all the data points to kind of look throughout the week. Okay, is Monday the most popular day? Is Tuesday the most popular day? Is Wednesday the most popular day? How do I plug those two workouts in? And then I kind of program the rest of the week around those two.
I do something similar to that. I think another aspect of, always having the same movement or the same strength piece on a certain day. Let's go again with the back squats on Monday, right? If you're an athlete and you always take Sunday off, that means every time you're back squatting, you're coming in fresh, you're rested. That doesn't tell me anything about what you can do in terms of a back squat when you've got some fatigue, because you come in a couple of days before, right? When maybe you haven't had a rested day, maybe the day before you had to go running. And conversely, if you're an athlete who always goes running on Sunday, does back squats, and takes Tuesday off, we never know what your back squat's going to look like when you're coming up completely fresh and rested. So again, moving those days around, we might not do a back squat for 2 weeks and that emoji, oh God, we haven't back squatted in 2 weeks. Maybe not.
But you do some type of squatting.
We've done heavy lunges. We might have done Karen, 150 wall balls for time. Okay, we've done something that moves us along towards our goal of increasing that back squat 1 rep max.
Sure. Oh yeah, yeah. And here's where I think going back, we're briefly talking about the strength and Metcon days and how it developed into this. That's what everybody thinks CrossFit programming is, which is never meant to be like
I'd like
that.
to blame Jason Khalipa.
Khalipa, maybe Rich Froning.
not the only one. Rich Froning.
They did the day in the life of Rich Froning, and you saw what you look. I make typically when Saturday before I work out, I make a slice of bread, egg, peanut butter. I call it a French froning because I saw in the documentary that's what he ate. And I was like, oh, all right, well, I'll eat that. So anyway, we learned from that and we saw the amount of volume he was doing, the things he were doing. And we're like, oh, well, CrossFit has it wrong. We're supposed to be adding the
Mhm.
strength most days.
And you changed it and you turned into Rich Froning, right?
Yeah, I had the junk headband. That's why I grew the beard. I mean, 100%. Rich Froning was the man, right? And I really looked up to him. And it did. I was one of those people that I thought that because the gym I first started at, it was not like that. And then I joined another gym that the programmer did program a decent part of that. And now the guy I was programming. Look, the gym was doing very well. A lot of RX athletes. You can see that it was helping them initially.
Initially, right?
Initially.
Initially because it was a change, because it was causing adaptation, because it was something they didn't usually do.
Yeah.
But once that new change turned into a repetitive, everyday, same thing,
Yeah.
I'm betting, I wasn't there, but I'm betting that adaptation stopped.
Well, adaptation injury.
Yeah.
Injuries. I don't want to blame. I don't want to say that anything was happening around that time because it really kind of the head coach that was programming, he and there was a falling out and we went away.
CrossFit drama?
Well, we're not getting into that.
Okay.
And it's affiliate soapbox, but it's not my
We're gonna
story
go
to
that far, not today, folks. That
but
would be a whole nother
he was a
episode.
really good programmer, and he, I think a big part of it was he was getting complacent. He was, fatigue, right? Programming fatigue. We all get as coaches we get in these little lulls and we just whatever, right? But we after that went to TZ programming, who was like strength and Metcon every day. TZ programming, strength Metcon, and we started seeing shoulder injuries. Well, then we dropped off that. We started writing our own programming. All right. Well, time format didn't work out well for the programming to happen. So then we went to Mayhem, strength plus Metcon most days. And the most aggravating thing about Mayhem was that you would have we'll focus the strength this cycle, right? And we're gonna do our percentages throughout every week for the week, and then we get to the fourth or fifth week and do a test out on the strength. Oh, you got 12 minutes to build to a 1 rep max back squat.
Ooh,
And then you have a 20-minute workout after.
No.
Well, of course we have. Look, we always have.
No,
As affiliate owners and coaches, we can adjust that. We can mess around. We can use that as a template and move it around. That's what actually Mayhem does say. Hey, if it doesn't work for you, change things.
But that's the problem I have. That if it doesn't work for me, now I'm taking something that I'm paying you for, and I have to change it and rewrite it for my athletes. So the athletes that I personally know, the athletes that we see every day. So no, I'm not going to pay someone else to program for people that they've never met. They don't see their progress. They don't know these folks. And that's one of the things. We are a smaller box, but that's one of the things we pride ourselves on is we know our athletes. We're talking to them on a daily basis. The coaches are interacting with each other saying, hey, so-and-so had this shoulder issue happen the other day. We need to work on this. Hey, this person, I saw that they could lunge with their left leg, but we had some trouble on that right leg. So we're constantly communicating, collecting that data.
Yeah. And here's the point that why I'm saying all this is because, yes, you can see some great things happen by doing that type of programming, but you have to put it up against the injury rates.
Mm-hmm.
If people are getting injured, it's not working. Something needs to change. Now you could change that programming, like I said, you could move that around, or you could program yourself. But the idea, I don't care what and who, like if Tanya ends up with high increases across the board by doing this, but then you have me with shoulder issues and hip issues and all these issues starting to arise because of the program, because of the amount of volume, because of maybe a lot of times it's just the amount of volume in that hour doesn't lend itself for the coaches to teach.
Or it's programmed, we have squats 3 days in a row. We have a hinging movement 4 days in a row, right?
Yeah,
We're squatting and hinging 4 days in a row, doing both. And I think that's the problem I see too is, yes, we want our athletes to be capable of squatting and hinging and pressing and pulling all of the movements all at the same time, all in one day, right? We want that capability because like you said, you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to come out of the hopper, if you will.
Yeah.
but I'm not going to train them like that every single day. And, again, I'm not saying legs day, arms day. I'm saying you need to look at the volume of each movement, the volume of each intention, of each workout, the timing, the modality. What are we doing to these athletes? How are we getting them forward without injury? And I think a lot of times these big programmers just forget that. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, we're going to do all of this and we're going to do it 3 days in a row. And then we're going to do this and that. But are you looking at the volume here? What's the injury rate?
It may work for their gym. And that's part of it, right?
And
It may
that's
work,
their gym.
That might work for their gym. Maybe majority of their athletes are competitive athletes.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
But doesn't lend itself to a gym that is not focused on that, just focused on health and wellness and movement and functionality.
And keeping
right?
people
without getting injured.
right. Giving them that better quality of life, which is what we are here for. And I think a lot of that comes, we can say, you can have, and I've heard this said, you can have really bad programming, but if you have really good coaching, right, that can offset the programming, or the coaching is better than the programming. I will agree with that. Having the best coaches in the world can make up for terrible programming. But that being said, let's give having these best coaches in the world the tools, right? So that they are set and ready to go. They don't have to rewrite my programming every day.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, if you call me up and be like, man, I coached 515 and we barely fit everything in and I needed to make sure I did this, I'm like, all right, we're going to fix this a little bit. Because again, I can't do this on my own. And I do get programming fatigue. Absolutely. Everybody does. But then I'll call you, I'll call Coach Kyle, I'll call Coach Simone, and I'll say, hey guys, I want snatching on this day, but I also want this, this, and this. Help. And then I get options. I get data, because you've all coached different classes before. You all know our athletes. You can see what I want. You know the plan. You can see what's coming up the rest of the week, what we did last week. And so then we collaborate. So by no means am I standing on a mountain saying, I'm the best at this. Absolutely not. I'm pulling from every experience I've had with being programmed for, with having to change up programming in a gym where I worked, that I was like, there is no way we're going to get these athletes doing this in an hour. I'm pulling for, that's the thing about CrossFit programming. It's always been a collaboration. It's an open data source of information.
Correct. The CrossFit.com is they do 2-week stints. One person programs for 2 weeks, and then another person programs for 2 weeks, and then another person. And that's one of the things that avoids biases right there. Even bad programming will make a predatory person, or a person who has no experience, better.
Absolutely.
Right?
Something is always better than nothing.
Bad CrossFit works, and I'm an example. I'm an extreme example of that. And
I didn't want to bring that up, but yes.
Well, I mean, when I first started doing CrossFit, I was doing .com, and I didn't know what the hell was going on day to day. I just was, okay, I think this is how you do a kipping pull-up while being quite like, what the f you do? Why you look like that? So I was that guy. I didn't know what I was doing with CrossFit for the first 3-4 years. I would just look at the .com workout, and I would do whatever it was it said. And I saw huge increases in my hockey game. So it does lend itself to even an athlete getting better just by doing terrible CrossFit.
It does.
So the program, and this is kind of what I say, is that this is one of, early on, you always, when you talk to athletes inside the gym, and I always question the program, not getting better because of the programming, not getting better because of the programming. And
how often are you showing up?
Well, I mean, that's
Lance.
one of them. I mean, that could be one reason. But even the people that see there consistently and always question the programming, they're not getting better because of the programming. And I learned that it has nothing to do with the programming. It has everything to do with the coaching.
The coaching, I agree with that. But
Everything
also,
to do with the coaching.
what is your consistency like? So I can be the best coach in the world, and I can have the best programming in the world. But if the athlete doesn't show up, if you don't show up, none of that matters. You need to be coming to class consistently.
The plateau will happen. The programming will get you here.
Mm-hmm.
Movement efficiencies and technique and everything else will get you above that. And the only way to get better at that is with a coach's eye.
With a coach's eye consistently on you.
So
Absolutely.
don't worry about the programming, guys. Come in, do the burpees.
Do the burpees.
Do the burpees. Do what Tanya programs.
Do what you hate.
Because
to get better at it, then you don't hate it.
Because like she said, just walking in the door and having a coach teach you how to make your movement better is going to, the plateaus won't happen. And if you do plateau, we'll figure out a way or something that lends itself to get off that plateau. And again, going back to the paid for programming, they don't have your members in mind. They don't know what your members look like.
They're thinking about a larger population many times of elite athletes, and we don't have athletes that are in necessarily their space. We might have a handful of those athletes, but our entire gym isn't going for the CrossFit
No,
Games.
no, I think that's the average. The average, been through a lot of gyms. The average gym might have, let's say, 5% of the people that can do RX every day.
Mhm.
And you can put that in a gym that has 500 people, and it's probably the percentage doesn't change much.
No, and that's another thing. If you are at a gym and no one can ever RX a workout, then that programming needs to be changed. There should be someone in your gym that can RX at least one of these workouts, right? Because we need to be programming, yes, for the best, but when it comes to our community, I'm programming for the best that we have in our gym and sometimes a little above them because I want to push them. But if no one can ever RX that workout, you lose motivation.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the intention there? I'm just going to program something that no one can ever do. That doesn't get your athletes in the gym. If you come up and see workouts, I don't know what that word means. I can't do those. I'm never going to be able to do those. And that weight is out of my range and always will be. That's the kind of mindset that you start putting in there when you are just using programming that no one can ever achieve.
Well, and I'll be a little devil's advocate on that against you. I'll disagree a little bit. I agree with most of it, but
Okay, go for it.
where I think the idea here is not necessarily what's written on the board if you can RX everything, but let's say we can build them up to RX one of those movements.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The move. I think that's where the carrot in front of the horse is the movement. Is what can I? All right, you did 10 double unders last week. You did 20 this week. You did 30 this week. Whatever. You added 10 pounds to your barbell. Whatever it is. I think those little carrots are probably. Can you have a community of people that salivate over hitting the RX button? Sure, and I think that's a good thing, and that for people to achieve that, to be able to click that RX is a monumental thing for them. But again, I think it looks at this kind of talking about the cycles, right? What's the microcycle there is that you're gonna learn this movement. All right, the meso, you're gonna get consistency in this movement, and then the macro, the big thing is the intensity.
Yeah, you're going to get the intensity.
Yeah.
We're eventually
And we'll hit that RX.
Right. That's not to say we will never have athletes consistently doing RX movements off the .com website.
No, yeah.
Right. We're pushing everybody to be their own elite version of themselves. And so, yes, that is going to happen. But if you put that carrot so far out there that none of the horses can even see the carrot, right? Then that's a problem.
Yeah,
you're killing motivation.
yeah.
You're taking away the
I
goal,
can see a little bit
and
of
you're
that.
not putting something up there that is a SMART goal, something that is achievable.
And the reason why I bring that up is I've seen a lot of I've coached hundreds and probably over 1,000 people, and the mindset of people who are constantly trying to achieve that RX usually end up in the injured bucket.
Right.
You know,
If you're constantly doing RX and constantly having to do RX or else,
or struggling to
becomes an
get
issue.
to that, or just thinking that, oh, if I'm a failure if I don't click the RX button today. And we've had this talk about
Right.
scaling many
Scaling
times,
makes you a better
right? About the
athlete.
engine and everything,
Yeah.
right? We could, and that we've had podcasts go back to that one and look at it. We want to get deeper on it, but yeah, I think that programming lends itself. A good programmer is gonna program for their gym.
For their gym, absolutely.
Can I program for and sell a monthly, program like Mayhem or Hill or Fit or you name them. I think that I probably could write a decent program that could be sold like that. And I think we all could. I think if you're level 3 and above, you probably could write a damn decent program.
But I don't want to. I don't want to write programming for people I've never met. Right.
Yeah,
I'm programming for the people that
yeah.
I've talked to that have come into my gym. This is my community. These are the people I know. I wouldn't want to program for a different gym, your garage gym out in Metairie. I don't know your athletes.
No, yeah. And there are several programmers out there that I would lend my ear to, and probably as long as I hear them say one thing: we follow the CrossFit methodology.
That's part number one.
Linchpin, jump ship training, Sentinel with Taylor Midself. They are inherently are CrossFit methodology, and if you adhere to the CrossFit methodology, I'll look at your program.
I'll look at it.
Yeah.
Probably not going to pay for it, but I'll look at it. Thank you for tuning in. Please like, share, and follow, and we'll see you next time.
I'm Coach Mertz,
And I'm Coach Tanya.
and this is the
Bye.
affiliate show.
Well, I think by now, if they don't know what they're listening to,
I don't know. Yeah, the sense of a
eh.
reminder here, right? I don't know what I'm listening to half the time.